Okay, so this is the follow-up video for the T-Lite V2. The original video I put out was just for the 4-in-1 version. This one has the internal Express ELRS transmitter module. So I'll link the first video in the video description if you want to check it out. When I got that sample, it came with OpenTX, but I'm now told that the 4-in-1 versions will also come with EdgeTX as the operating system. This one came with EdgeTX, obviously to manage the internal Express LS module. Now the reason this video is really late, and basically I was waiting around for the final version, the V2 firmware to come out for the internal module on this. And the only way to update this to get your binding phrase into the module was to flash it with V2 firmware from one of the, I think it's 2.x.x maintenance branch. It's not in the main branch. It's not actually a formal release. Now, some of the first videos that came out on this model, on the V2 for Express LRS, showed that it was in the main branch for V2. And that might be the case. That might have been there at some point, but they've removed it. And of course, now we know that version 3 is out, which is now why I'm making this video, because I pretty much have given up hope that version 2 is ever going to formally come out for this one. So what's on here is just a maintenance release of V2. They did not put the formal version of V2 firmware back into the main branch, so they've just moved on to version 3. So version 3 is in there. So if you go into V3 and the Express LRS configurator, you're able to see the firmware for this one here. Like it's called T-Lite and something like that, TX module for the firmware. I'll put it up here on the screen if in case I haven't already done that. But yeah, if you're looking to get the final version of V2 on here, you're pretty much stuck with just the maintenance branch version, which still works. Now, the power output on the internal module here is limited to 100 milliwatts. So I have been using this pretty much as my daily driver for the last month or so. Not too long. Obviously, I enjoy the form factor. Obviously, at 100 milliwatts, it's not going to tax this battery whatsoever. And of course, with the internal module, I don't need to attach an external module for Express LRS unless you want to go to higher output power. But in that case, I'm just going to use something else. I'm actually going to go back to the Beta FPV Lite Radio 3. I am told the EdgeTX firmware support is going to be out pretty soon. I'm running like a nightly build on there. Seems to be okay. No issues yet, but yeah, I'm going back to that radio because it has higher output power. And if you're wondering why I'm not using the Zorro, is because the Lite Radio 3 is much lighter. And I actually prefer the lighter radio over the heavier radios. So yeah, there's not much more to say about this guy. I haven't had any problems with it. 100 milliwatts of power is a pretty limiting factor. I don't know why. Obviously, well, I speculate as to why it's limited to 100 milliwatts because the small form factor and there's not much room for heat dissipation in terms of heat sinks. Obviously, they could have modified the casing here to add a heat sink to the module to increase the output power at a fan. But of course, they're updating this old design with newer hardware, and I think they were limited to 100 milliwatts just because once you get to higher output power, it releases a lot of heat, and if it's not able to dissipate that heat properly and the RF chips get too warm, they start dropping packets and you're basically back down to lower power anyway in terms of reliability. So that's why they limited it to 100 milliwatts. At least that's my speculation based on the engineering. I don't exactly know the reasons. They didn't tell me, but I would have liked to have seen this at least at 250 milliwatts like the Zorro is. So that's kind of disappointing. The T Pro is not much bigger than this, but they designed it obviously with a heatsink and everything for that internal module, and it goes up to, I believe, 1 watt. So, but the reason I don't use that radio is because the way the sticks stick out way really high, it just feels uncomfortable to use. So basically, whereas this is kind of recessed here. The T Pro, the sticks are way over here, so when you're holding the radio, I feel very kind of awkward in the way it's, use the radio, whereas this is a little bit better. The distance between my thumb and my fingers is a little bit less compared to the T Pro is like this. So I don't, it's a kind of, after flying for a while, it gets kind of uncomfortable. So that's why I don't use that radio. So yeah, it's ergonomics, everything, it's subjective. So, it really depends on you, what you like. Obviously, if you're a pincher, this is not the best radio for you because it kind of depends on what pinching style you use. I don't pinch, so I am not qualified to answer whether or not this is a good radio for you or not. This radio's been around for a while. Some people pinch on it, some people don't. It really kind of depends. So I can't really answer that for you. But for me as a thumber, I hold it like this. It's fine. I like the ergonomics of this radio. It's just that because it's only 100 milliwatts, I'm no longer going to be using this one. So yeah, it's going to go back into the box. Probably going to either give it away or sell it off. Not sure yet. But yeah, that's the end of this video. I basically waited around to see if they're going to release the V2 firmware for the module, and they never did. It might have been there for a while, but then they went back to putting a maintenance release firmware in there, so that's kind of disappointing. But version 3 is out now, and that's supported, of course. But then, if any of you guys bought this and are you flying your tiny whoops, you have to flash a nightly build of Betaflight to your flight controller to get the V3 support, and so it's kind of complicated. I don't recommend it. I did make a video on how to do custom build flashes back when V2 wasn't supported properly. So it's basically the same thing, but you're gonna have to go and hunt down the custom firmware on your own. I'm not gonna release that information in this video. I'm sure someone out there has it already. It's probably, I think you have to get a GitHub account or something like that. Yeah, it's convoluted. It's enough to the point where I don't want to explain it and I don't want to do it myself. So basically, yeah, I'm going to wait until the formal V3 support is in Betaflight 4.4, and who knows when that's going to come out. Probably in about 3 or 4 years from now. So I think by the time Betaflight 4.4 comes out, based on the rate of when 4.3 came out, Express ELRS version 15 will be out by then, probably. Anyway, what do you think? It's a kind of a joke, but Betaflight support or I guess development is really slow, and Express ELRS development is really fast, and that's kind of the reason why there's this lag in support for SPI receivers or for the built-in SPI receivers on the Whoop flight controllers. So yeah, I'm thinking version, I don't know, realistically it's probably going to be like version 4 or version 5 of Express ELRS before we see formal support in Betaflight 4.4. I don't know if they'll be up to that point by then. Maybe they'll be on Betaflight 4.4 will have version 3 support, and then Express ELRS version 5 will be out, and then you'll be back in the same boat where you have to flash a nightly release. So it's kind of a mess, and I don't want to get into the politics of all that, but yeah, that's kind of where things are right now. And for this radio, yeah, if you're okay with version 3, yeah, it's got support in there now. If you want version 2, you got to use a maintenance branch release for the firmware, and it works, but you're limited to 100 milliwatts. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Talk to you guys later.